Welcome to each one of you. Each day, we're going to start our sessions with a keynote, and I will introduce the keynote speaker in just a minute. But first, let me just go over a couple of the things for this session. This coming session will discuss the research behind the psychology of self-sufficiency, and Dr. Hong will explain that concerning the force inside an individual that drives the cognitive change needed to transform challenges into progress action steps. And the discussion each day will revolve, in terms of the application, will revolve around two of the six topics, A through F. So today it will be particularly applied to topic A and B. And then it will, with a focus on self-regulation, goal setting, and a vision for the future. And it also considers the impact that refraining from non-marital sexual activity can have to improve the physical and emotional health of youth. Now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. Philip Hong is Professor and Associate Dean for Research at Loyola University Chicago. He's the founding director of the Center for Research on Self-Sufficiency in the School of Social Work and has been there since 2016. He's also a faculty associate of the Center for Social Development at Washington University in St. Louis. He's currently partnering with local workforce development, fatherhood programs, and youth development and education initiatives to develop bottom-up strategies for empowering individuals and families in their quest to achieve self-sufficiency and relational and family stability. You will note that Dr. Hong's research has primarily been with adults related to self-sufficiency and how they overcome barriers and challenges to achieve hope and success. However, he's also tested this with a group of youth in foster care and will be relating it to the SRAE field as the presentation progresses. You see on the slide there the barriers and the arrow to hope, and you'll see that throughout as it appears in a number of slides and how you can move and how youth can move from barriers to hope. Dr. Hong will first provide some background on his research, and then we'll move to lessons learned, how they apply in the SRAE world. So help me welcome Dr. Philip Hong.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. And depending on where you might be, good morning to some of you. It is such a great honor to be here to join you in this session as I introduce you to some of the work that I've done in the context of serving the communities, particularly the low income to moderate income communities, often faced by many vulnerable and at-risk situations. And also making the link to our youth community that we serve. So it's a great honor to be here. And I know there is a hand raised in the screen here as we look at our participants. We may be able to do our question and answer at the end, but I don't know if there might be any housekeeping questions that's urgent that might be relevant to everyone. Are there any immediate needs? That I think the hand's been up for a little while. Just want to make sure that we can take care of everything for everyone before we start. Are those hands for questions?
Thank you, Dr. Hong. Do you have questions or just inadvertently raised the hand? We want to be sure that you're able to hear and listen, and in the chat you can put any questions you have, and our host will help you if they're technological. So go ahead, Dr. Hong.
Okay, we just wanted to make sure that everyone's okay. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start by just sharing with you as an introduction. Much of my research grew out of the welfare reform legislation of 1996, which had 4 goals that are to provide assistance to needy families so that children may be cared for in their own homes. and also to end the dependency of needy parents on government support by promoting job preparation, employment, and marriage, and to prevent and reduce the incidence of out of wedlock and teen pregnancies and births, and to establish annual numerical goals for preventing and reducing the incidence of these pregnancies, and to encourage the formation and maintenance of two-parent families. As we know that these are the main four goals as authorized by the legislation, you can see the immediate connection to the SRAE program, which emphasizes helping youth make choices that allow them to reach their hopes and dreams of education, a job, and a stable marriage and family. I'd like to bring your attention to this problem definition of self-sufficiency, and it's just termed problem, not to call it a problem per se, but it's something that we are trying to define the source of what contributes to the concepts that are in sequence of happening, that we can approach it with some solutions in mind based on the way that we define the issue. Now, often when we look at the issue of poverty, this in the public domain of promoting self-sufficiency, we have found that welfare dependency might be contributing to poverty, and then what might be contributing to welfare dependency were found to be psychological barriers that might be present because of individual situations, but often structurally, systematically, there are societal issues that contribute to the barriers that we face. So there are many challenges that come in the way of reaching our goals, in particularly as it relates to SRAE, and also with parents trying to find jobs and caring for their youth, their children in the homes. So when we look at the layout of the definition in this way, self-sufficiency becomes the coined term that is desired outcome to overcome poverty, and paralleling some of the ways that problem has been defined in the public domain. Paralleling the psychological barriers are often those conditions of out of wedlock births, single parenthood, out of home care for children, lack of education and training, and often also paralleling the welfare dependency, we would see weakening of family structure and private charity that could be strengthened, and also labor market disconnect that could also be strengthened in terms of connecting those areas where their disconnect is found. So these are some of the ways that the unpacking of these kinds of definition has been rooted in the community, in this journey of uncovering the aspects of this problem definition played out by experts such as you, many of you who are and who are currently listening, who have a great wealth of knowledge and expertise in being able to see these aspects of paralleled aspects of conditions that are connected to SRAE, following the sequence of the ways that problem definition of self-sufficiency has been laid out and presented. So this is kind of what we've been finding in our research in out of the context of welfare reform. But for now, what does the word self-sufficiency mean to you as an adult, as we will make the connection to the youth and the SRAE program in a short while, as we will return to that. But for now, let's kind of take a few minutes to think about these questions. In your own words, what does self-sufficiency mean to you? What makes up self-sufficiency? In other words, what are its components? And please list what factors can help you achieve self-sufficiency. And if you would, just take a pause, take a minute to think about this from your own perspective as an adult supporting our youth, um, and all the great work that you've done, taking your wisdom to try to answer these questions, if you would. And if you are inclined to share in the chat box of any kinds of ways that you'd like to approach these definitions, not necessarily try to create the right answer to, but something that is meaningful to you in the way to define this term self-sufficiency, and also to make the link to our youth as well. But that's going to be the next part to the question. So let's hold off on that. Just try to answer this currently as where you are, who you are as an adult to answer these questions. Being able to rely on yourself to care for yourself, which includes being able to voice your needs to others, providing for self, skill building and empowerment, being independent, confidence in one's value, worth, and ability, having control over my own choices, being able to provide for self, self-reliance and determination, having the tools and skills and knowledge to do things independently, being able to provide for myself all the basic human needs and being able to help others grow, independence. Components may be financial, emotional, mental, physical, doing for self, building community or nation, being able to take care of yourself, reliant on oneself, being able to support yourself, being able to provide for yourself, the ability to overcome obstacles, independence, able to think, plan, and build as an individual, intergenerational healing, skills to succeed, take responsibility for oneself, being able to handle your responsibilities, to provide for yourself, your basic needs. All so many great answers here. I can't read them out all the way as the list is growing. So I'm just going to scroll down to see if there are any parts that have not been mentioned. Emotionally and intellectually independent, having your needs met, taking care of your family, empowerment, positive sense of self and the unique identity, ability to live in healthy relationship with others and care for own needs and those needs of those who depend upon me. Wow, such great answers. Confidence that I can find resources, stability, protective factors to resiliency, self-efficacy to sustain and thrive. Great, excellent, amazing. Ability to navigate systems, being able to and willing to take care of yourself and navigate your life responsibly. Amazing answers. Freedom. So many that I may have missed some significant ones, but I did try to read as many as possible as I scroll down. But I think those are really great answers, and I really want to respect the expertise that are in this room together today, because what you're bringing to these answers show so much of what you're doing in light of how you're trying to empower our youth in the community. And self-love, of course, we see that answer, freedom and self-love. And so I think these are really great answers, and they can all add up to what this presentation is going to be about in terms of defining success from the perspective of our youth. And that's exactly how we would approach the next question, the same question, but we would ask, maybe you might want to be the youth and bring the youth perspective and trying to answer this question, of what self-sufficiency mean in the youth world, and what are synonyms or components in the youth world, and what factors can help youth achieve self-sufficiency as you defined it. So whether it's independence, whether it's emotional and financial stability, making decisions for yourself, and having the confidence and being able to care and have freedom and self-love, however you defined it, what would help our youth to reach those goals of self-sufficiency? And could you kind of do some Um, Try to answer those questions as well if you as you've defined it for yourself, but maybe switching hats to be a youth uh, as those who you're serving to try to answer these questions, please. Yes, better understanding of their own goals and values and being able to make decisions in line with those goals and values. Great. Thank you. Grown. Okay. Self-sufficiency is not relying upon parents or my wants, for my wants, and eventually less for my needs to prepare for my future. Having goals and achieving them, supportive environments, making decisions about the future and what direction they want to take. Know who the caring adults are in their lives. Excellent, thank you. And identify what their needs, goals, and desires are first, then establish steps to go get to those needs and goals, right? Able to think for myself, first believing in their own abilities. Wow, that's great. In the youth world, it's the independence to explore and figure out the world around them, how to start thinking like an adult, right? Understanding ways of working through situations as they arise. Okay, learn more about their family history that allow us to better understand behavior today. Role modeling, what self-sufficiency looks like. Okay, great. Having sufficient education and skills to independently meet personal needs, able to navigate the world and become independent, identify needs, distinguishable from self-reliance, problem solving, access to life skills, opportunities such as community service learning, identifying and fostering healthy relationship and confidence in those who can provide for their needs and wants while being trained to begin doing this for themselves, understanding self and making decisions for yourself, being able to observe others as independent individuals and making goals, actions to become independent on their own, safe space to explore and develop positive sense of unique identity. Very nice. Uh, Thinking as a youth, one of the factors that would help me achieve self-sufficiency is asking for help to better understand how to take charge of their own goals, how to navigate moving from teen to a young adult. My goodness, what a comprehensive list of all the great answers to these questions on behalf of our youth. Thank you so much for that. And being able to make decisions for self and finding identity, these are so comprehensive that we are bringing in amazing wisdom and your experiences, lived experiences, and your service experiences working with youth to cover all grounds, basically, as how I'm going to be laying out my experience of reaching this point of meeting you in this training. And that has been the journey through trying to uncover the definition of self-sufficiency, more or less from the adult perspective, but very relevant in the way that we're common human beings, and particularly developmentally as youth are emerging into adulthood, also trying to figure out for themselves what our goals, how do we reach our goals, how do we make decisions, how do we become independent being to fulfill our destiny of our greatness and holistic self that we deserve to be part of designing and uh, and and defining. Yes, insulation and supportive, positive adults to guide them through inevitable mistakes, so they can learn instead of being harsh consequences alone. Okay, bearing harsh consequences alone, providing opportunities to practice life skills in a safe, supportive, safe space. Great. So, with all the great coverage of your wealth of knowledge and experience and expertise, we're now moving into um, sharing some of my research and the results that I have found among adults, and then make the connection to the SRAE A through F topics shown in the screen. You're very familiar with these, and today we'll focus on topic A and B, especially the concepts of focus on the future and future prospects as it relates to psychological self-sufficiency that we'll be learning about today. Um, and your experience and knowledge will resonate, will connect with the things that I'll bring to this to this session. So going back to a time, I would say, in 2004 in St. Louis, Missouri. So some of you might be here from this region in Missouri, St. Louis, or in Midwest in general. But my journey started when I was able to visit with the Metropolitan and Education Center in St. Louis when I was working on the faculty of St. Louis University in 2004. And this particular place had a combination of the local human service agency with community college, and also a job training program that brought all those stakeholders together to, and they were funded by a large private foundation to seek the best model for moving individuals to self-sufficiency. One of the experience I had as a person coming into this space, asking individuals, how do you define self-sufficiency, whose answers were very similar to yours in ways to define it from the adult perspective, and also inclusive of the youth and children's perspective. There was this moment when I was coming in as a researcher asking them, how do you define self-sufficiency, as if they would define this differently than I might. I never asked myself how I would. But one person in the focus group pointed at me and asked me, how do you define it? Are you self-sufficient based on your definition? And we could ask, maybe pause 1 minute and ask ourselves, based on our definition, are we all self-sufficient today? You know, and I could not answer that question. I paused and there was a long silence. And then I immediately found myself reconnecting from a me to them kind of divide, to where we to us connection in that moment, and understanding that this self-sufficiency is not just about our clients or customers whom we serve, our youth, but it's about everyone's journey in ways that we reach our success goals. It was a process of empathizing, of defining, of generating new ideas, of developing a prototype of pathways toward a better life and towards self-sufficiency, and finally of testing out the theory and actions. As you see in this upper right-hand side, the design thinking steps for innovation that was taking place in this space. And so you would see as this design thinking process rested on this empathy, where the us came to life, where I was connected immediately, I was invited. There was this understanding that I am no longer coming in just to pick the knowledge from the community, but connecting with the true journey that we're on. And it's about us. It's no longer between you and me. There's this big divide. So that was an important experience for me to understand that this is about us building knowledge together and trying to unpack what the self-sufficiency means, not from the policy context, but one in our own life context. And so from the participant focus groups, we learned that self-sufficiency is one part of it is about, as you have all indicated in the chat, is about psychological empowerment. One particularly about a couple of the highlights were feelings and the mental state of mind, feeling valuable and worthy, positive attitude, having faith in yourself, power and energy that you get from inside, feeling comfortable about being in charge, determination, knowing you can take care of yourself and your family without fear that they might turn to the streets, being self-confident you're moving forward, or that you'll one day achieve financial security. And so one of the quotes, I think everyone has it. It just needs to be brought out. Bringing people out. You have to love yourself before you can go out anywhere else and do what you need to do. You have to be positive in yourself and know what you need to do. And also another aspect of self-sufficiency was goal-oriented process. Self-sufficiency is about the level of confidence that a person can achieve his or her goals by conquering the obstacles in life. This group of people, the group of people who identify goal-oriented process as a definition, share the thoughts that they cannot be 100% self-sufficient at a given time point. Self-sufficiency has to do with the process of getting to the next level. There are different levels of self-sufficiency, and these levels are reached as individuals move toward their goals and makes future progression. And the quote to represent this particular aspect is self-sufficiency to me is more about being able to accomplish a goal you set in life and follow a profession or career and not settle in life and think I made it. It's not the end goal. And also self-sufficiency has to do with, dealing with psychological barriers. All persons have some psychological barriers. Youth have psychological barriers and challenges. They're going through physical and emotional changes while also dealing with relationships, the pandemic, being accepted, etc. This affects their choices and their resiliency. Self-sufficiency starts with the mind in being able to understand your own human development and taking responsibility for your choices in that development. Self-sufficiency, or for youth perhaps, emotional and relational stability is always a progression. It's never a spot to which you arrive. And also it's about self-sufficiency is about self-worth and perceived capability. First thing in self-sufficiency is liking yourself. Many people are not taught to like themselves. If you do like yourself, you build confidence and are willing to strive to struggle to reach your goals. Self-sufficiency or stability. You need to believe that you have value, you have worth, you're important. Then you're willing to extend yourself and invest in yourself because it's something you're doing for yourself and for the future. And also it's a goal-directed forward movement. As people might say, I can do this. I have to know the path to take. I'm physically and mentally well, so now I can set my priorities to be self-sufficient. It's also about balancing perceived barriers with hope for the future. It helps people understand the different challenges stopping them from doing what they need to do or want to do with their life. Conquering the obstacles in your path takes strong self-efficacy and confidence. So these are sort of kind of aligned with all the great answers you shared with us. And it's something that I learned in 2004 to sort of introduce this back to our program administrators and foundations and funders and government collaborators and partners to bring this back into life of how we can incorporate this in the way of serving our community. And so how this all came together is this concept of psychological self-sufficiency more as a process to the outcomes of any kind that we call success in programs or individual life in general in our journey. So psychological self-sufficiency, or PSS, is the ability to transform seemingly impossible barriers into hope of the possible. It embraces empowerment and is a strength-based approach to building character and capacity to sustain skills training, education, and daily choices. And my research focus group studies define self-sufficiency, like how you shared in the chat box, as a process of developing psychological strength and making goal-oriented progression toward realistic outcomes. It also embodies mental contrasting that generates energy toward goals by associating reality and future possibilities. And psychological self-sufficiency is also conceptualized as a dynamic interface of non-cognitive and cognitive forces that help one, especially the youth, remain resilient on the path to future goals. So you'll see next in the diagram here a kind of an overview of how these barriers, as identified by youth, in some areas or domains of internal emotional and mental health barriers, are also external peer pressure to veer off the path. That'll veer off the path, and physical barriers, pregnancy, drug dependence, or personal soft skills and relational barriers, and societal barriers, feeling excluded from opportunities that might exist out there. So these barriers one might perceive, and how do you then transform that to the hope elements that are psychological empowerments with self-worth, self-perceived capability, and efficacy, and also goal-oriented pathway of self-motivation, skills and resources, and goal orientation. And how do you do that? With one barrier block, you see this red, it's symbolic. With one step, you might take back, but you're taking 2 steps forward with these 2 green boxes, is kind of how it's shaped here. And we're going to see that continually throughout the 3 days of our sessions. And that process of switching from the red to the green, the barriers to the hope, would allow us to get to our stability and success outcomes through completing education, employment, and getting to employment and family stability. And we would also see in going back to that earlier problem definition as it applies to the youth in the context of youth stability. We saw the top row of showing the psychological barriers to dependency, to poverty, but this language switches to more of an inclusive, more strength-based language as we translate from the adult workforce development context of human capital development, labor force attachment that leads to economic self-sufficiency and financial security and stability, to the context of youth that we will see not just through employment in the way that we talk about psychological self-sufficiency in the adult world, but in the context of positive youth development and skills and healthy decision-making skills. These are important in light of the SRA, what SRA promoting healthy choices through knowledge leading to changed attitudes and behaviors that would ultimately lead to youth optimal health and relational stability. So this would be relevant in the context of applying what we learned through our research with adult population and workforce development, particularly from job training and employment context, to ones that will be more developmental and focused on youth strengths and resilience as they are trying to reach optimal health and relational stability. And I would also want to note that these are the 2 steps forward, the blocks that you see, and then the red is the 1 step back with the barriers. The 2 hope, the hope blocks are intentionally 2 boxes there to bring out the best in each youth that they have inside, to make sure that we can be intentional with those 2 hope steps that they can bring out of their own system, out of their own lived experiences, and whether they might be facing any type of challenges. From that is also always the 2 step forward is what we're talking about in terms of psychological self-sufficiency as a theory of change. And, just so that I can share with you one of the key pieces in the blue box, or the green boxes that you saw earlier, that was the employment hope. The employment hope, and then there was the perceived employment barriers. The hope scale, the employment hope scale, was validated with a vulnerable youth as well, although it may have come from the adult population and workforce development. This was found to predict positive goal outcomes among youth. And one can, and the link is in the chat, so in case you might be interested in looking at this particular article, we could have this link will take you directly to a PDF version of this paper that you can look at. And this scale also has been identified by Mathematica Policy Research as one recommended metric to capture the goal achievement processes. So one can consider using this scale if program seeks to prepare participants to set pursue and achieve employment-related goals. Program participants have the capacity to fill out self-reports, which require a moderate level of literacy and time. And you can also see the link to this paper as well. Just as in the adult world, so in the youth world, we are all looking for that balance in our lives where we are at optimal health. All is right with the world and our relationships and our future. So optimal health is a dynamic balance of physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and intellectual health. Lifestyle change can be facilitated through a combination of learning experiences that enhances awareness, increase motivation, and build skills, and most important, through the creation of opportunities that open access to environments that make positive health practices the easiest choice. And I think we want to emphasize that just as we are making this relevance from the psychological self-sufficiency research from workforce development to positive youth development, and particularly in light of connecting it to our SRAE goal of promoting and reaching optimal health outcomes. So one of the earlier, as we were combining the data, the focus group data from in asking individuals how to define self-sufficiency, this kind of the pathway from the red to the green emerged. It's a bottom-up empowerment pathway to goals. You might be disconnected. You might feel like the goals are unrealistic. You might be in a situation where the goals might be, you might feel that the goals are externally imposed, and you might distrust the process that might be that you might be introduced to, that is laid out to reach the success outcome of optimal health or relational stability for youth and other developmental tasks of youth in terms of reaching the goals. You might be in that situation. That's maybe a place where you're high on a lot of the barriers, but you might be disconnected then, but the pathway forward allows you to be somewhat discouraged, but you're taking the first step forward through goal-oriented pathways and motivating yourself with psychological empowerment that would lead to psychological self-sufficiency increasing and enhancing, and empowerment growing with expected goal outcome and meaningful self-managed goal attainment. And that would allow us to reach the destination of the future goals and relational stability. So this is another kind of application of the two steps forward as we were distilling the data from our focus groups to kind of lay out a good pathway for success as we're all sort of connected in our human spirit of moving forward, also relevant in the case of the SRAE work we're talking about. So as we're going to be making these connections, particularly as you highlight, as you see the highlighted in orange and yellow, are the A and B. And that's where we're going to try to bring to light how the psychological self-sufficiency work, the research, can be more specifically tied to our focus in the SRAE work. And so if I might read the A, so the part A, the holistic individual and societal benefits associated with personal responsibility, self-regulation, goal setting, healthy decision-making, and a focus on the future. These are sort of the kind of the keywords that stand out: personal responsibility, self-regulation, goal setting, healthy decision-making, and focus on the future. That has a lot of connections to the psychological self-sufficiency framework, where PSS, or psychological self-sufficiency, is an individualized process. It is one that one owns in ways that they're conquering their obstacles to reach their goals, And switching of barriers to hope is also one that one is using the self-regulation skills to reach their goals. And also setting the goals is really important in terms of finding a purposeful and meaningful goals for each youth, and also doing the healthy decision making by contrasting the barriers to hope in a way that you're kind of weighing the heaviness of the barriers, but also you're making the decision to move forward with 2 steps forward. And you're able to focus on the future as you target a desired future state as a youth who can imagine many, many things that could be possible for the future. And also looking at the B in the A through F, the advantage of refraining from non-marital sexual activity in order to improve the future prospects and physical and emotional health of youth. And the key piece to that is improving future prospects, improving physical health, and improving emotional health. So when we were to look at psychological self-sufficiency, how that connects to this particular piece is the cost benefit or the risk benefit analysis one undertakes in this way of looking at the barriers and hope. And youth will be able to do that. They're empowered to do it. It just needs to be brought out in a way that they can channel their focus to the goals, and the barriers and the hope are contextualized within the goal pursuit. Once they're committed to it, then you can do the risk benefit analysis. And if the hope outweighs the benefit as a benefit to the risk of the barriers, then you are in line. You're trying to reach that physical health through intimacy and emotional health through partnership that will come to fruition in the work. So I know I'm preaching to a wonderful group of experts out there. So hopefully this resonates with your expertise and the theories from your practice and all the work that you've done in making these connections. So I'm only bringing you a toolkit from my research, so that we can maybe bring this in a way that we can intentionally measure the hope aspect of our youth and their pursuit of their goals, and also the barriers as they see the barriers, not us imposing or saying identifying the barriers for them, but the youth for themselves to figure out if this is a barrier. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's okay to not be, and leave it alone for now. But then it may emerge as the goal becomes much stronger, as you're committed to the goal. Sometimes even just life situations just become barriers in the function of trying to reach the goal. It's kind of like, as you're trying to run fast into the wind becomes the barrier, because now you're trying to run through the wind to reach the goal. So that's the kind of thing. It's just the friction or the things that come in the way of you reaching your goal. And that's it's not a negative thing that one would be down about or be shameful about. It's something that is just part of the journey, the part of the run, part of the race. So we can sort of maybe a recommendation might be that perhaps to look into the PSS as a non-tangible process that typically we don't measure, but one that we find as psychological capital within each youth. As we could think about, and when we're looking at optimal health, we can look at health hope and perceived health barriers, not necessarily employment related, but it's a health hope and perceived health barriers. We can see those two be contextualized for youth, optimal health for our youth. Also, PSS as a non-tangible process can capture the staff effort in teaching, coaching, and building hope and resilience in our youth. Often these efforts that we pour so much of our heart and soul and our spirit into our youth are not captured adequately. So these efforts can be all can be captured through using these the PSS as possible metrics in our effort, in our pouring of our love and compassion. Those things all can come to be captured through looking at PSS. And it's a theory based on empowerment perspective that we can kind of take away from that. PSS as an intermediate benchmark can allow us to celebrate the success and positive youth development. And it's a theory based on empowerment perspective, as we kind of saw earlier. We're coming to almost kind of a last couple slides, and we're going to be ready for Q&A. As you can think, if you might be, slowly start to think about what you might want to ask. But so for practice implications, we kind of saw the earlier slide, but also PSS or psychological self-sufficiency, the framework and the metrics can provide added research basis to the comprehensive and holistic approach of SRAE that's already in place, but it could help and juxtapose or complement the things that could add as resource to do great work under SRAE initiative. And it also can help bring the concept of hope as critical to success pathway. That requires developing relationships and respect for the youth being served. And also one couple pieces that we want to remind ourselves is the strategies to build and maintain hope for youth might involve individualized goal attainment plan, support services to remove barriers that block the pathway, reassessing and revising goals with the youth as partners, and assessment based on short-term achievement of the process or intermediate goals of the PSS, improvement in hope scores, and the decrease in the barrier scores as the youth might participate as active agents in this process. And PSS is a strength-based approach, and one can use it as a benchmark to look at the extent to which changes in individual youth contribute to SRA goal attainment. So we can connect the hope and the barriers to SRA goals and the benchmarks that we want to look at. And we can sort of create this collaborative setting of youth optimal health goals need. And encourage as it is a joint investment with the facilitator in the change process as partners with the youth. And last but not least, PSS process planning needs to be tailored to the individual needs of the youth and efforts of youth needs to be considered. We have to pay attention to the youth needs. Particularly identifying barriers both at the structural and individual levels, not to blame the youth for some of the consequences or the conditions that they're under, but it's one that is just the as-is given condition that we want to start with. How do we start there? Whatever it might be, just being real about it and confronting those barriers as real, and assessing the degree to which youth experience identified barriers and creating hope actions together with youth that can be taken to move beyond the identified barriers and challenges, and assessing the PSS process in terms of behavioral change, moving the youth toward optimal health. So these are some of the references that I cited as I was going through the presentation today. And I'm gonna take us to the slide with opening up for questions.
Dr. Hong, maybe we could ask people to put their questions in the chat box. And we had planned for about 20 minutes, and we're pretty much right on target here. So we've got a good opportunity for you to interact with Dr. Hong on this research, psychological self-sufficiency, how it relates to you and your program. And so while you're putting your comments in the chat room, maybe I could just start off by asking you, Dr. Hong, when these concepts that you're talking about, the psychological self-sufficiency and when people kind of understand some of those barriers in their life and start seeing the pathways to hope, both in your workforce efforts and your your foster youth work, what are typical reactions that you see, when you've held some of your seminars and interacted with people? Give us a little insight into, I know you gave us earlier some comments, but some additional insights.
Thank you for the question. And I'm sure many of you can also chime in to help me with answering some of these questions too. But just in the context of psychological self-sufficiency, working with the youth, often we start with the term barrier, and that could be I faced a lot of pushback amongst the youth of the term barriers, and recommendations from the youth have been, can we use the term challenges or other terms other than barriers, because sometimes the barriers might feel like it's about me. It's about it's too close to me, and or maybe I'm a barrier to the situation under which I'm currently living through to reach my goals. And so there's an immediate pushback, which also is the case of working with adult population too, but more so with the youth. And that term itself turns people off, or youth off, quite a bit. But as we unpack it, whether we end up calling it barrier or not, we could always change it and shift it. But the framework of that, it's not where you're stuck on these barriers, but you're sort of using that as almost like a we're going to get to that in the next couple days, but like a slingshot. You kind of draw back on the barriers, but you're releasing into the wide open possibilities of unknown, but one that could be very positive in nature if you go grab and find how you can connect to those opportunities. And why not take the barriers to the unknown and throw them out there, but then allow those to come back to you in the form of hope for opportunities. And that's the launching of individual, the unlimited possibilities in each youth that we've uncovered and learned from the youth in terms of how they've actually helped us to figure this out, as how this would work out in the way that as they own this process, it becomes almost like of an art form of how it gets kind of presented, and also as they're launched, their futures are launched out as small step goals, but then the longer term goals kind of stay intact. So those are some learnings, and people, youth in particular, really once they embrace this kind of concept, they're so quick to learn, and they also then it's no longer trying to teach them, because they already have it inside of them. And once they realize that it's just kind of a second nature that they have to be more intentional about bringing out, not for survival, not just to get by, but to thrive. How do we use this PSS to thrive is what youth is able to switch in terms of reaching their goals, not just to reach that goal, but get to the next goal and the next goal. So that's what I've been learning, still learning today, and will probably be learning tomorrow and many, many more years down ahead. But I just wanted to share that of my experience of working with youth.
Great. Dr. Hong, Melissa asks, she says, among the references, are there metrics and or a performance framework that has been created that would help persons track the development of PSS in their project? This may be jumping ahead to something you're going to talk about tomorrow, and if so, why, you can certainly refer to it.
Thank you. And I'm going to just post the reference slide just in case if people want to look at it. It's a lot of just cluttered words here, but in these, you can see this particular one that I cited. That was the one that you got the link for in the chat, is a publication with the employment hope scale. Now that can be translated to the health hope scale that I mentioned just on a maybe just a few slides ago. And that's where the goal is no longer employment. If it's youth development for optimal health outcomes in the SRAE context, then it's a health outcome that we're trying to reach. And youth can embrace that and commit to that pathway and use the metric of health hope. And also barriers to keeping a good optimal health could be the, kind of the metric to use. Though they can be adapted and measured over time to track youth in the way that they would voluntarily participate in it, because they also would. I've been getting feedback from youth that they also like to kind of see how they go up or down on these measures. So partnering with youth to mark those answers, and also to view them as you see them up and down as they change over time, could be a good way of engagement and also reflection on their journey as agents of their own change, that they're kind of on being in the driver's seat to do that. So I really appreciate that. We'll talk a little more about it in the next few days as how we could incorporate some of those metrics. But thank you for the question.
So yes, Melissa, he was referring to the third reference there on the reference list in answer to your question. Catherine asked about whether there was additional research that would relate to the A through F. And thank you, Labrita, for posting some additional research related to some of the work that FISBE has been doing on conceptual models for SRAE and cessation models. And so Labrita just put that in the chat as well for people to access, because there's considerable research that would kind of be parallel to some of the things that Dr. Hong is talking about. Any other questions that you would like to ask? Please put those in the chat. And Dr. Hong, if you would move to the next slide and maybe just leave that on the place which gives how they can contact you as they're thinking about other questions they might have, so that they can see your email as well. While others are thinking about maybe a question they want to ask Dr. Hong, it seems to me that your framework can certainly be applied, and it's very similar to some of the frameworks probably that grantees have been thinking about, particularly about helping youth think about the future and goal setting, et cetera. So any other comments that you want to make that might be helpful to them in terms of, is this something that they should be keeping in their mind, and then they can tell whether youth are expressing barriers or expressing hope? How should they see it from kind of an educator facilitator standpoint in terms of using this framework?
Well, thank you for that question. And also, I want to honor everyone in this room who's in the audience, just for all the dedication and the commitment to the youth and the SRAE work. I am continuing to learn about this, the areas of application to strengthen and support this work. And many, of course, there will be many iterations of my effort in partnership with Public Strategies and other researchers who will be doing this work as well. I know it's there is this tomorrow's session is going to tie a little bit to the toolkits of how to strengthen the muscle of psychological self-sufficiency. Today was just about the theory of it, conceptualization, where it came about, how it came about, and the measures, so forth. But tomorrow is when, from working with many practitioners on the ground and many participants on the ground, I've been informed that if we can be deliberate and intentional about increasing the goal setting aspects of strengthening the goal setting aspects of psychological self-sufficiency, how would we go about doing that? As you probably are experts about, my compilation of toolkits will be introduced tomorrow in the topic of transforming impossible into possible, which by many practitioners and leaders in the community have told me and informed me and challenged me to come up with a prototype of something that could help invigorate this process of PSS. If we were to be, if it's inside of us, how do we bring it out? How do we activate it? And how do we do code switching from, oftentimes we're living in a lot of times of many challenges, and how do we code switch towards getting things done that's more immediate to those that are goal related, more for longer term. And we switch back and forth to make sure that the dance is not kind of crazy and responsive to the happenings, but it's more methodical and thorough in the way that we're trying to reach, and engaging the youth to be in the driver's seat to be able to do that. The wisdom is already there, but some toolkits will be shared with you tomorrow. It's the kind of so small bits and pieces, bite-sized activities might be also things that we could experience tomorrow.
Great, thank you, Dr. Hong. One last question, and then we'll take a break. One person, Monica, asked, what were the demographics of your research? And this is primarily, I think, just related to your research with adults. But just very quickly, what would be some of the demographics that you could share?
It's all walks of life is what I would say, and the champions of those who've survived many types of trauma and experiences of challenges in general. And that could include many of us in this room, like including myself. But I would say in general, many of whom who are coming back from prison, domestic violence, substance abuse, homelessness, many challenges, and even physical and mental disabilities of different kinds. Often who would share in their youth what had happened to in their journey, and the consequences, and also the ways in which they conquered those obstacles to be in this success pathway now. Had they known this or that, are often the wisdom I would be given and provided to from the sharings of many of their walks and journeys. But those are folks. A lot of them are women who are in healthcare training, like CNAs and medical assistant trainings and LPNs. But also those that are in community college in general, or those that are in training programs in the community. Maybe fatherhood programs, who are talking about how they could be better fathers with their youth. So there are a lot of people that I've talked to along the ways of my journey. But youth, particularly if we focus on that group, are mostly foster youth that I've been working with, who taught me so much through their being brutally honest about sometimes calling me out as a researcher, that you need to come down even more down to where it needs to be met, exactly where I am. You are assuming a lot of things, so call me out on a lot of those instances of connections. So really, I got to learn to go in with humility, no assumptions, and just be as youth-centered as possible, and with no assumptions or judgments. And that's the only way that I could learn, or we can all earn the trust of the youth to be in partnership to reach the goals of SRAE. So those are some of the things in my own walks I could share with you. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dr. Hong. So we are going to end this session. Dr. Hong will be keynoting each day and bringing another aspect. And so we're going to take a break. And whatever your time zone is, join us back at the bottom of the hour. That's 2:30 in the East. But at the bottom of the hour, go to your agenda and click the link for the grantee panel, and we will see you there. So take a break. Thank you.